any org, it would be helpful if you can share not only the top line, but that bottom line. Because again, that comes with a lot of education on how that works. So we do that at Be the Change HR. Top line, gross profit margin, net profit margin is shared. And that, again, it comes with a explanation and definition every single meeting, right? So it's understood what these numbers are, and they're delivered with what our goal is as well.
Hello, Profit First entrepreneurs and thought leaders. I am so excited. Today we've got a hot topic. Today I have a special guest. Her name is LeiLani Quiray, and she is the founder of a company that specializes in HR. She's the founder and CEO of a company called HR Inc., which is a minority and woman-owned business. It's a conscious company, a social enterprise. And what they do is they provide HR support to small and medium-sized businesses. They help with the pre-hire, post-term hire, and everything else that might happen in between. And today we're going to talk about aligning employee performance with company goals. I think that's become a very hot topic lately. Like, how do we motivate our employees to achieve our company goals? We've talked about setting up KPIs, but how do we get their actions to align with things that we want, right? And so today, please join me in welcoming LeiLani Quiray to our platform. Hey, LeiLani, how are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. How are you doing?
I am doing really good. And I'm excited about this topic too, because at some point, it really is about the team, right? If we're not all moving in the same direction, we will not accomplish our goals. And this is such an important topic because of that, especially when it comes to motivators. But, I always like to get the background story behind it. How did you get into HR? How did this become your thing in particular?
Yeah. I have always done HR since I was a teenager. So when I was in high school, the next door neighbor asked if I wanted to work at his construction company processing payroll. And I thought that would be a much better idea than working in a quick service restaurant. I don't want to do that. So I was like, well, yeah, I said yes to that. And therein started my HR career. And in my teens and 20s and 30s, I did the whole climb the corporate ladder, and working in mostly small and mid-sized businesses, usually setting up their first HR department and then taking it from there. So it's been 7 years. Be the Change HR is just celebrated 7 years. And so when I started the business, I think like many entrepreneurs, there's like this thing inside of you that's like, I don't want to work for someone else anymore. That seems like a bad idea. I don't like listening to anyone either. And then I didn't want to make money for other people. I thought, why don't I take my skills and talents and why don't I start my own business? It was my third business I had started, but this time it was like I had what I needed behind me, the experience and the gusto to get it done. And so I launched Be the Change HR, wanting to do human resources consulting and some type of philanthropy under one roof. At the time, I didn't know what a social impact business was. And so fast forward to today, 7 years later, I have a team of amazing 16 folks here, and we provide human resources consulting for small and mid-market businesses. And then we have the social impact piece where we dedicate 1% of our top line revenue to a job readiness program where the consultants here and myself, we teach job readiness classes for sex trafficking survivors by teaming with the nonprofits that support those folks around the country. And that in itself has been a challenge and also a goal when you're talking about running a for-profit business, but having that social impact piece to keep it financially healthy in order to support that. So that's a bit of my journey in the HR space and in the entrepreneurial space. And I just absolutely love it.
I love that. And I love the name of your company too, Be the Change HR. HR, it really is the vehicle that creates social initiatives, right? Whether it's creating a diverse workforce that reflects our population and mentors everyone up. implements policies. It really is how things get done in an organization. So I love that you've done that, and congratulations on supporting such an important endeavor, with allowing women to not be abused. So that is really great.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let's talk about aligning employee performance with company goals.
Yeah.
And this is a challenging topic, right? Because I can't think of a complaint that I hear more of about just getting everyone moving in the right direction and growing profits and things like that. So first of all, let's talk about why is it important to align employee goals with company goals or
Yeah.
employee performance with company goals.
Oh,
Why is that
totally.
important?
I mean, most businesses run on people, right? And it is extremely important. I mean, let's just start from the very top. Businesses will do strategic planning. Hopefully it was last year. If it's right now, it's okay. Nobody's judging you, but you set your strategic goals on, maybe the top 3 to 5 things a company's going to accomplish in the year, and you set out to do it. Almost always people are attached to those goals, right? Whether it is we want to increase sales by 5-10% in the first quarter, or we are going to scale and grow, or we are going to work on a merger and merge, 2 companies together. All of these require that you have employees on board. Now, of course, the C-suite, your executive team makes this decision, and then it's up to whether, depending on the levels of your business, either you are managing your employees or you have leadership below that's going to do that with the employees. And so it's like everything that happens in the C-suite room needs to trickle down to everyone with as much clarity and dedication as it is in the C-suite, but that has to be done different at every level. And so I think one really important thing to do when we do that type of thing is to make sure that our communication is crystal clear, that everyone understands the why behind what is happening. And then that way they can, it's like they're in the room. I think a lot of times as leaders, or even just in general, in our own head, we know the plan, we know the path. And so we turn around and maybe we have a, watered down version that we tell the next person, but it's like, no, you have to walk someone along all the steps that are required and necessary for them to understand what that goal is. And so number one, just clear communication. I've heard this several times. I'm in the EOS world. It takes 7 times for someone to hear it for the first time. So that's the next thing, is like ultimate patience and communication when you have a goal like that it's going to need to be done and said and explained more than once before people are like, it clicks with them. And then distill it down to how it affects that position and role and what they're doing, and have them be responsible for that key piece that they're doing, that key number, that thing, the action that they have to do. So it's like it has to always trickle down from the top with as much clear communication that is in our brains and our own understanding as leaders, all the way down to the person who'll be executing it.
I love that. You said something critical there. You said it takes 7 times of repeating yourself to an employee. And I know most of us entrepreneurs, that's probably one of the biggest complaints. I told him what to do. He still doesn't do what I say he's supposed to do. And patience and candles being burned out because of that. But that's untrue. You have to repeat it over and over again. It's not just a one-time say and it's done. It's reiterating that message over and over again, saying it in different ways, bringing it out every step of the way is so important.
Yeah. And it's taking that big thing. Like, let's just take the sales. Like, we're going to increase, our sales by 10% for the next quarter. Okay. Someone hears that on the sales team is like, well, what does that mean for me? But we all know we can take these numbers and distill them down to what does that mean for that person? So if we're going to increase by 10%, then that means that person's sales goal is going to increase by 10%. And then you can work those numbers as well. What does that mean for them? And everyone in the sales world knows, okay, it takes this many qualified leads to get this much business on an average of this much closed sale. And so you can tell that person, okay, that means you're going to be responsible for having, Let's say it was a certain number. Now it's 45 leads that come in, qualified leads per month, and that's how you'll get there. And so they'll be responsible for that number, right? Now, maybe the bigger number is like, that's not okay, that's a big number. But for them individually, they'll understand that if you explain the math of how it rolls up into the big number, it becomes a lot clearer versus just saying you're now responsible for 45 leads, right? And I think that's one great way to align what leadership is doing, what a business is doing with what the employee is doing. So again, it's crystal clear, and then there's specific numbers involved.
I love that. So really setting out that path, right? If this is our company goal, this is statistically how we meet that goal. And this is what your part in meeting that goal is to generate the leads, whether that be X amount of phone calls, X amount of appointments, to generate that complete outcome. That's how you play in that role
Yeah,
of allowing us to create our company goals.
totally. And then I want to talk a little bit about something that isn't as clear, right? And I'll take our company as an example. We have core values, core, we all do, right? And we've decided to add another core value. Now, this isn't something that, at least in our organization, for this specific core value, that will have a number affixed to it, right? We're not going to turn around and be like, you've met 80% of this core value. We're not measuring it that way. And so that's one of our big goals for the next year, is to make sure that this gets instilled in the organization. So that is, this core value for us is go-getter, right? Now, we set it once in a meeting and we know, okay, maybe they heard it, maybe they did not. And then we've set out a plan to incorporate this core value into things that we're doing in the next year. My first, and a lot of what we do here at Be the Change HR, some of it's required, some of it is not. And this is like a soft launch into this. So the next piece of that was, if anybody on the team would love to learn more about this, we'll buy you the book. Not required to read, but if you want, it's an easy read and you can read the book. And then I attached a PDF. Too long, didn't read. Here's the 5 pieces of being a go-giver, and based on the book by Bob Berg, Go Giver. I don't know if I said go-getter, I meant go-giver. And so that's the next piece of it. Then in a month, we're going to have a whole team building day on that core value, and we'll continue to roll that out so it becomes something where someone's like, oh yeah, that's our core value. It's a go-giver. And this is how we implement that with each other, with our clients. And then just a great one to have all around. So that's a little softer of like, it's not numbers, but here's how we're launching something to where it will get ingrained into the org in a supportive and fun way in order to meet the goal of rolling out that core value.
I love that. I love that. And I love that fact that you're actually making kind of almost like a book club part of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they can actually learn more and dig deep on it. And they also see the company serious, right? You're actually investing in education for them to learn how to do this even more effectively. So let's talk about some common types of performance motivators that a company can implement in order to achieve their goal. Like, what are some common ways of incentivizing employees so that their performance will be aligned with the company goals and produce those things?
Yeah. I mean, one is obviously compensation, right? Some comp can be directly tied to motivating them for that performance. Sales is a really great one. There could be bonuses, there could be things like that. I want to take that a couple steps back though. When we talk about compensation, I think it is extremely important for organizations to make sure that they benchmark what they have in their orgs before, because compensation can be a strategy to motivate towards those goals. As we know, and as the surveys have come out, it's never the top motivator for a person. It is important. And then it's also required to be able to support somebody at a fair wage, right? To live. And I think it's when, you can talk about giving pay increases based on performance, but we need to know where that baseline is. So I always say a compensation analysis is very important for organizations to do, to make sure you know where you're at in the market. Even if it isn't in the budget, you know where you're at in the market. And maybe there's other pieces you can tack on to the total package of someone working with you that will help bring it a little higher up than just being comp. And maybe comp not under budget, but you make up for it in different ways. So money is always a really great one. The other one is, there's something really important that should be done in orgs in tying the value, the purpose, the drive behind what a company is doing and what that employee is doing, that motivator of truly being a stakeholder in the company's vision and its purpose and why that matters. And it doesn't matter what type of business you're in. You know, I was working for an organization that built telephone poles, right? Heavy duty telephone poles. And part of us making sure that the workers there, the blue collar workers there, knowing how important what they did is tying it to you ensure that people, that families can communicate. Like that is like really important, right? Pick up a cell phone, call your mom type of thing. And so I think it's important for companies to illustrate for their employees what the company does that makes a difference in the world and how it does that. So that's another, I think, great way to motivate outside of just compensation.
I love it. I love it. And those are really great. And you said something interesting. I'm going to peel it back before we went into there and talked about core values. But you talked about understanding your baseline, right? Understanding your baseline and then deciding on how do I compensate in addition to the baseline.
Mhm.
And so when you talk about baseline, what is baseline?
Yeah. Um, Base salary, right? What is the base salary that you're paying that person? And then when I
Is
talk
that
about,
like the average person, like if you're going to salary.com or Indeed or something like that, is that like the 50 percentile? Is that what the base stands for? Or what is,
it depends on the compensation strategy for an organization and what they can afford as well, right? It's a bigger conversation there. That baseline for an organization could be anywhere on the spectrum of what the market is paying, right? We would love if everyone paid right on that 50%, you know, of what the market pays, and it's like average. We're paying average, and then you have, you know, the average benefits on top of that. But sometimes for a company, that baseline might be lower. The pay might be lower, and it is figuring out what can be added in order to make it to that 50%. It'd be great if everyone could pay like 80 percentile or something like that or more, and then add
wouldn't
on bonus.
it?
Yeah, that's not always the case. So
The
companies,
80% would become the 50% then, right?
yeah, exactly. Exactly. So it's looking at, I mean, this is any type of like total package for an employee. It'd be looking at the total comp package. It'd be looking at the benefits that you have to give, right? Sick pay, the ones that you should give, like time off, vacation, holidays, the added regular benefits on top of that, 401k, health. And then what else can be added? And the one thing that I would employ leaders and businesses to really look at is the growth of that person. Now, this can be done on a larger scale with, you know, let's say tuition reimbursement or something like that. But that might be too costly. Or a coach. Ooh, that'd be so great, right? In any type of leadership position, hire a coach for someone to make sure you grow them. But sometimes that's not in budget. So there's other ways that you can continue to grow someone within an organization. Maybe that's a mentorship program with someone. Maybe that is some type of DIY learning. We talked about a book club earlier, taking your leadership team through different books and discussing them and putting them when you're we do this at Be the Change HR, in discussing the book, any action plan for that person to work on and then return when we come and revisit the next chapter. So there's all kinds of things that can be done in a position to make sure that you're constantly educating and growing them besides just paying them that base salary.
Right. Should everybody be compensated and rewarded with money?
Legally, yes. Do you
Well,
mean,
besides the
oh,
base salary. I mean, should in order to align employee and performance with company goals, is money the primary way that you would recommend motivating an employee, or should some people not be motivated with or be rewarded based
not
on
everybody
money?
is, right? So we have the needs of people. We need money to like live, right? And so that's important. And then, of course, paying according to the position, the person's skills, qualifications, paying fairly. Again, compensation analysis. What does the market pay? What are we paying here? Outside of that, again, the job satisfaction and engagement surveys show that comp is usually number three on the list, right?
Okay, so it's pretty high then.
Yeah, it is pretty high. So I think it shouldn't be the sole way of motivating an employee, but we also know that everyone's motivators might be different. And that is a understanding through one-on-one conversations with your employees what really motivates them and what they need in that role. Maybe it is bonuses based on, their performance, but maybe it is something else.
Got it. Do you find that employees are typically pretty upfront with what motivates them, or do you find that?
Depends. Yeah, it depends on how much trust you have in your organization and with your employees if they're going to actually tell you that or not, right? And that again is leader by leader, building trust to their employees to be able to have those open conversations so they feel comfortable in saying exactly what they need.
Now, I know like in Profit First, we put more emphasis on the bottom line, right? Like how much do you take home versus necessarily the top line? Obviously, the top line can influence the bottom line, but at the end of the day, it's the bottom line that we're more concerned about. And there are certain positions, right, that are really instrumental in terms of getting to that bottom line, like your ops manager, the people that are really in control of the operations, right? And and so a lot of times what I see is as owners, there's a hesitancy to share financial information. They may
Mm-hmm.
not want to share the bottom line, right? Especially if they're on Profit First and the numbers are looking pretty nice. Um, what advice do you have for that, for someone that really is instrumental for creating the bottom line? How do you create a compensation structure for the bottom line, but at the same time, you've got this concern from the owner of not wanting to release information?
Yeah, it's a tough one for a lot of businesses the last couple of years. I mean, let's even like starting in COVID, it's been a bit rough, right? And some have excelled, right? High five to all of you that have had all of you that have excelled. That's amazing, but a lot haven't. I think in any org, it would be helpful if you can share not only the top line but that bottom line, because again that comes with a lot of education on how that works. So we do that at Be the Change HR. Top line, gross profit margin, net profit margin is shared. And that, again, it comes with a explanation and definition every single meeting, right? So it's understood what these numbers are, and then they're delivered with what our goal is as well. Now, this has been extremely beneficial because we've tied this compensation wise to a profit sharing plan on our 401k. So 401ks, they can have the regular, employer match, employee puts in money, company puts in money, and that's employer match. Then there can be profit sharing on top of that. And that's another piece you would write in with your third party administrator on adding that 401k piece in. And then you can share the profits of the organization when the owners decide to, based on insert the thing is, whatever it might be. Here at Be the Change HR, we do profit sharing when we hit a certain net profit percentage on that bottom line. So if we tie all of this in, educating the employees, having them understand, what these numbers are and how it affects their pay, I think that's really important. It's not an easy task because, and I can say this from experience, it isn't fun to report when that percentage isn't a good one for the organization. And we've had 2023 was a really tough year for us. But what that also allows for is when you can report the company's financial condition, when you are going to make steps and changes to reduce cost, everyone also understands that. And there's not a lot of explanation needed outside of, hey, we're not hitting our numbers. In order to keep the company healthy, here's the things that we're going to do. And everyone's on board. And even in those moments, I've had people individually reach out and say, how can I help more? So I think it can be done on both sides. On, if you help us meet these numbers, we're going to contribute to your 401k. Everybody likes extra money. Some of you owners know, in a profit sharing plan for a company, that also can allow, depending, you got to talk to your third party administrator in the 401k, that can allow for more money to be socked away for owners, right? And that can be really helpful in saving money for retirement. But also the team, you can figure out how do you reward the team based on that. And again, those numbers can also be worked in a 401k for that profit sharing for the 401k.
I love that. So
Yeah.
what do you think is a good percentage in terms of profit share with your employees?
On,
On profit, like what do you think would be a good percentage or if you're going to do a profit share?
yeah, it depends on how you do that. You talking specifically in the 401k?
Yeah, you can do 401k
I
if you got a
mean,
profit share plan or you can bonus it out
yeah.
in some cases.
Um, I mean, this would be like a good CFO question. Ask your CFO on what that could look like and what those are. At Be the Change HR, we did it based on hours worked versus seniority. So it just,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so you did hours work versus right, got it. I've seen it where they have a benchmark. So if our profit is normally 10%, anything above 10% would be what we would share a percentage of that on with the
Uh,
employees, that type of thing. That way, it's not really fair if you're coming in brand new and you're sharing in this profit that was already there for many years, right? Because there was always a book of business that has been built on. So I was just curious to see what your recommendations were with that.
I mean, I would talk to your TPA. There could be other ways to figure that out and factor that in based on seniority. Of course, there's always like an asterisk next to this. They have to do the discrimination testing. And so depending on the makeup of the organization and the age of everyone, that could possibly, they might say, well, you can't give this person this much, you have to give them this much. But
Yeah,
um,
you can get into top heavy and that type of
yeah,
thing. So
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it can get more interesting from that standpoint with that. And there are ways of bonusing it out. You can, if you don't decide to do the 401k, cash bonuses may not be subject to those ERISA rules.
Yeah,
So there's
exactly.
a lot of different ways really with it. But I do like the idea of rewarding them based upon overall performance. Obviously, sales will be a top line revenue item, because they're actually going out and bringing in revenue, and that's what they're responsible for. But those are in operations, definitely more so profitability. I think it's a bigger metric for that, and that's great that you share your numbers. I think that's wonderful, and like you said, it helps with the downturn. It helps when things are not going good. I'm curious, LeiLani, where do you see things go wrong when it comes to employee performance rewards and company goals? Like, where does it go bad?
Oh goodness. Employee rewards, company goals. I mean, the biggest thing, and I talked about this earlier, is just communication. Having everybody understand, why these goals are set, why these rewards are being done, making sure everyone's on board, making sure everyone's educated so that it's all understood, right? That's the biggest one. Just, I mean, I think in any org, and on any level, it's always going to be communication. It's going to be a communication thing of like, does it make it from the C-suite or the decision maker's head, right, out on paper, and then to everyone else in the same way that the first person who made the decision understood? And then how
Right.
is it communicated and how and sort of constantly done so everyone knows.
Oh yeah, it's interesting because some leaders are better at communicating than others, and everyone thinks they're a great communicator, but I mean, I have seen it. Some are actually really good at it. And so if it's not your skill set, it might be something that's worth investing in as a leader, right? For
Really, I have to, I mean, myself as a leader, I practice the why behind everything, right? You ask someone to do something, and then I pause and go, I tell them why, right? I need you to do this because here's why it is important. So that way there's a full picture there. And that could be a good small practice in the way of the bigger thing that I'm saying is like always communicate the why behind you, why you're asking someone to do something.
Right, right. So that they get it and it become really ingrained and aligned. And also when you're not there and questions come up, right? They can make the decision that's for the greater good when they understand the why. Now, I'm curious with this, is because it's going to happen. What happens when an employee doesn't meet their performance goals and they're not contributing?
Two different avenues and thoughts come to mind. One is you don't want to keep a non-performing employee around for very long, right? And you want to make sure and then the other piece that I'm thinking about always is why. Sometimes it's because they're not in the right role and they're not able to perform. They just don't have the ability to do it. And they need to either be moved out of the organization, or if they live all the core values and they fit in well, maybe in a different seat that better suits them. But the other is life happens. And a lot of times when these situations come up, I always defer first to like, are you okay? Right? Let's just start there. Is everything okay? Because I've seen, issues with your performance, and it could very well be that something is going on, and that might include a whole other set of conversations. Do you need time off? Do we need to, like, what do you need in this situation? And then the other, again, is what I said before. Maybe it's not the right seat. Maybe you need to move them. Maybe they're just not right for the organization altogether. And as as graciously and as quickly as possible, need to figure out an action plan to give them a chance to meet those goals, and if not, exit them quickly.
I love that. So I think that's the key is exiting them quickly if they're not able to adjust or flux or change. Now, you did bring out something interesting in that sometimes it's personal things, but you and I know that sometimes those personal things can last years if you allow it.
Yep.
Let's talk about boundaries. When is
Yeah,
enough enough?
exactly. I think there's always time in a conversation to pause and say, hey, I need to think about this. I'm going to come back with some solutions, right? So you can always do that with an employee if they say, I've got this, let me just make up something. I'm going through a divorce. We just decided this last week. Okay. But you can also put the same as you do with like a performance improvement plan, or hey, you need to improve with this amount of days. You can put that time on that as well. Like, I want to make sure that we revisit this in 2 weeks and go back over performance. I have this thing that I always say is we have two things going on that are really important. One is supporting you. The other one is the business has to run. And we have to figure out how to balance those two. So first and foremost, it's the person. Please take care of yourself. Do you need time off? Yes, I need time off. How much time do you need? And can the business support that? Right? Because the other part of that is, can the business still run? And so if someone is having an issue that lasts a couple weeks, can we support that? Yeah. A month? Yeah, right. But after that, we need to make sure that things are going to start, picking back up or whatever that might be in order to get back on track. And so putting those milestones in for that person as well. There's always an HR asterisk next to this one. If it's anything that's protected by law, the Americans with Disabilities Act, anything, it cannot be discriminatory. So those types of things are always at play on the HR side, but the human piece of it is, yeah, we can give time for that type of thing, but we also need to have our own boundaries and parameters around, well, how long can that last? Can the business support it? Because it still needs to run.
Right. And, I think that's probably the area that I see business owners struggle with the most. There's employee has good days or bad days, and they see hope and they stay vested longer than they probably should in some cases. And it ends up costing them more in many cases. So, and unfortunately, it's more of a, there's no hard written rule, with it. And so it's a tough situation.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is, but like we signed up for this, right? So we have people to take care of, and it's important. And then we also have a business to run. So balancing those two things. And again, I flat out say that in the conversation. You first, I'm here to support you first. And you need to take care of yourself, and the business has to run. So we'll figure this out together.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, Leilani, this has been an amazing conversation. So many juicy morsels and things to think about. We'll have to talk with you about, other things. Because I know in the green room, you were talking about other things that we could do, with motivating employees and getting ready for 2025, specifically for goals. But this has been an amazing conversation. One of the things I love to ask our guests is if you could leave our guests with one piece of advice. It can be business, it can be personal. What would that one piece of advice be?
We can be busy, busy, busy folks, and we have so much to do. So, my one piece of advice is just make sure you carve out time for yourself to do something you love at least once a week for at least an hour. That way, you can show up as yourself fully for your people, for your family, for your org, and support them. Because as leaders, as business owners, we have so much on our shoulders. And I just ask you, please take time for yourself.
Thank you. And that is so important too, that you actually put it on the calendar, right? Because,
Mhm.
what gets imagined doesn't always get done. But if it gets on a calendar and you have to go someplace, it does. I like to make appointments, like at my spa and things like that to make sure it actually happens.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, Leilani, thank you so much for joining us today. How can our viewers and our listeners reach you to find out more, to learn more?
Yeah, we are on all socials at Be the Change HR, and you're welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn at LeiLani Quiray.
Thank you, Leilani.
Thank you.